She waited for the sound. The room was silent, except for the steady hum of the overhead lights and the faint drip of a leaking pipe in the corner. Yet she knew, sooner or later, someone would speak. Someone would question her presence at the table. Someone always did. Her uniform was clean, pressed, marked with years of service that most of the men around her refused to acknowledge. She sat at the far end of the briefing room, hands clasped still. The map spread across the table seemed to burn with invisible weight. Red markers, blue zones, a black circle over an unnamed village. No one looked at her, not directly. And for a moment she let it happen. Because sometimes silence gave her space. Sometimes silence meant they wouldn't hear the tremor in her breathing. But there was something they didn't know, something she hadn't told them, not yet. The colonel cleared his throat, gravel in his voice. We have one shot at this, one night, one target. Chairs creaked, papers shuffled, voices overlapped. She stayed still. Her eyes traced the circle on the map. A house. No, a compound. Somewhere beyond the hills, tucked between dirt roads and broken stone walls. Intelligence called it an operations hub, but to her it was something else entirely. A place she had seen before in memory, in smoke, in grief. But how could she explain that? How could she tell them the mission they were planning had already scarred her life years ago? No, not yet. A younger officer leaned in toward another, whispered but not enough. She caught the words. Why her? Her jaw tightened. It was always the same. Questions, doubt, the unspoken weight of her being the only woman in the room. They didn't know her record. Or maybe they did and pretended not to care. Maybe the medals, the commendations, the nights spent in dirt and silence meant nothing when weighed against their own egos. But she remembered. She remembered the first time her hands shook. The first time the rifle felt heavier than her body could hold. The first time she pulled the trigger not in training, but in the raw blur of combat. Her hands had trembled with fear once. Now they held steady. The colonel's voice cut through again. We'll need someone inside before the team moves. The silence shifted. Heads turned, some toward her, some away. They knew what that meant. They knew her file. They knew she'd gone deep before, alone, unmarked, unacknowledged. The colonel's gaze settled on her. Lieutenant. She met his eyes, calm, unflinching. Will you take this one? The room held its breath. A second passed, then another. Her lips barely moved. Yes. The sound of her own voice startled even her, soft, but cutting. And in that single word, something shifted. The younger officer looked down at his notes. The whisper stopped. The air thickened, carrying with it the weight of what had just been decided. She stood slowly, the chair scraping the floor. Her boots echoed against the tile as she left the room, the map still burning behind her eyes. But outside, under the sharp glare of daylight, the air felt different. Lighter. Hot wind carrying dust across the base, helicopters whining in the distance, the faint metallic tang of jet fuel. She pulled her cap lower, not to shield her from the sun, but to block the stares. Because the truth was, she didn't care if they believed in her. What she cared about was buried deeper, hidden beneath medals, beneath scars, beneath the practiced calm of a soldier who had learned long ago that trust was a fragile thing. She walked past rows of hangars, each painted dull gray, each holding machines that could end lives with the push of a button. She had flown some of them, walked away from some of them with smoke still curling off the wings. But not tonight. Tonight she wouldn't fly. Tonight she would walk. And walking meant remembering. Her steps slowed when she reached the edge of the runway. The heat shimmered, making the horizon blur. She stared at it, unblinking, as if beyond that line lay an answer she hadn't found yet. A voice pulled her back. Lieutenant. She turned. Sergeant Malik, broad, weathered, carrying the kind of fatigue that etched itself permanently into a man's eyes. He had been in longer than most. and he had seen enough to know when someone was carrying more than just a mission. "You sure about this?" His voice was low, not accusatory, but heavy with something else. A plea, maybe. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied him. The sweat on his brow, the dirt under his fingernails, the faint scar running along his jawline, old, faded, but never forgotten. "Doesn't matter," she finally said. He frowned. "It should." The words lingered. For a second, she almost said it. Almost told him why this mission wasn't just another operation. Why the compound circled on the map had already stolen something from her that she could never get back. But the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she adjusted her cap and stepped past him. "See you on the other side, Sergeant." His eyes followed her, a weight pressing against her back until she turned the corner and disappeared into the narrow shadows between hangars. Alone again. That night she sat on her bunk, the room dim except for the faint light bleeding through the window. The air smelled faintly of dust and oil, a smell that clung to everything here. Her rifle lay across her lap, its metal cool, familiar. She traced a finger along the barrel, not with affection but with memory. Each scratch, each worn edge was a story, some victories, some regrets. She thought of the girl she had been once, young, untested, staring down the scope with trembling hands. She thought of the day her fear cracked, giving way to something harder, colder. But even now, the tremors returned when she was alone, not in her hands but in her chest, in the quiet places no one could see. She leaned back, eyes closed, the silence pressing in around her. And she saw it again. That place, that house, that compound. She smelled the smoke, heard the screams, felt the heat against her face. Her jaw clenched, her eyes opened. No more. Not this time. The knock on her door startled her, quick, sharp. She set the rifle aside, stood, opened it. Corporal Ray's, younger, nervous, trying to mask it with a crooked smile. "Sorry to bother, ma'am. Colonel wants final confirmation before midnight." She nodded. "Tell him yes." Ray's hesitated, his smile faltered. "If you don't mind me asking, why'd you volunteer?" The question caught her, not because it was rude but because it was honest. She studied him, saw the way his hands fidgeted at his side, the way his eyes darted between hers and the floor. He was young, barely out of training, and already carrying questions that could break a man if left unanswered. "Because some things," she said softly, "don't give you a choice." He didn't understand. She didn't expect him to. He nodded anyway, almost relieved, and stepped back into the corridor. She closed the door, leaned against it, and let the silence return. Outside, somewhere in the dark, engines roared to life. A reminder, time was moving. The mission was waiting. She sat again, lifted the rifle, and whispered to the empty room. "Steady." Her hands didn't tremble. Not anymore. But her heart, that was another story. The desert always spoke in whispers. Not the kind carried by voices, but by the wind moving across the barren earth, weaving through jagged stones, carrying secrets that belonged to no one and everyone at once. She crouched low, boots pressing into sand still warm from the day's sun, eyes fixed on the horizon where shadows deepened into night. This was the part no one ever saw, the waiting, the stillness, the careful breaths before the storm. Her pack was heavy, pressing against her shoulders, but she hardly noticed. What weighed more was the silence. Out here, silence wasn't empty. It was a pulse, a rhythm. One wrong sound, one wrong breath, and it could end you. She adjusted the scarf around her neck, dust scratching her throat. The village was only a mile away, a place of stone walls and cracked roofs, where children played barefoot in daylight and men whispered by candlelight at night. But in its center, inside one particular compound, lived the reason she was here. Her team was still miles back, waiting. She was the one chosen to move first, to slip inside, to open the way. It wasn't the first time she had done this. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the shadows carried faces she had once known. She moved. Slow steps, careful. Her body blended with the night, each motion deliberate, every sense sharpened. The faint bleat of a goat in the distance, the creak of a wooden shutter in the wind, a dog's bark, short, sharp, then silence. Her fingers brushed the grip of her sidearm, steady, firm, but she didn't draw it. Not yet. Weapons were last resorts. Tonight, her weapon was patience. She reached the edge of the village. Stone walls rose in uneven lines, patched with clay, streaked with age. The air smelled of smoke and earth. Somewhere, faint laughter drifted. Life continued, even under the shadow of war. She paused in the darkness of an alley, crouched against the wall, listening. Voices carried from the compound, male, harsh, urgent. Words she couldn't make out, but tone was enough. Command, anger, control. Her chest tightened. The sound clawed at something deep in her, a memory she had buried but not forgotten. She shook it off. Focus. The compound wall rose ahead, higher than the rest. Barbed wire tangled along the top. A single guard paced outside, rifle slung carelessly across his back, his cigarette ember glowing faint red in the night. She crouched lower, breath shallow. One chance. The wind shifted, carrying dust. She moved with it, slipping from shadow to shadow, each step timed with the crunch of gravel under the guard's boots. He turned his head, exhaled smoke, glanced into the night, but his eyes never found her. When he walked past, she slid behind him, silent as breath. A swift strike to the base of his neck. His body crumpled, cigarette falling, glowing ember snuffed in the sand. She dragged him into the darkness, propped him against the wall as if sleep had taken him. Her heart hammered, but her hands steady. Always steady. She scaled the wall. Fingers found grip in stone cracks. Wire bit into her gloves. She swung her body over, dropped silent into the courtyard below. Inside, the world shifted. Voices louder, laughter sharp, the clatter of dishes, the slam of a door. She crouched against the wall, eyes scanning. Shadows danced across the courtyard from a lantern swinging overhead. A truck sat parked, dust coating its windshield. Crates stacked by the door bore markings she recognized. Ammunition, supplies. Her jaw clenched. This was no rumor. This place wasn't just a meeting point. It was a hub, a pulse. Cut it and something bigger bled. But there was more. She felt it. A heaviness in the air, like the ground itself remembered. Her eyes lingered on a window above. Shutters open, light spilling out. A figure moved inside. The shadow of a man, broad, commanding. He raised his hand, others obeyed. Her chest tightened again. She knew that silhouette. But how? She had never told anyone, never shared what she saw years ago, the night flames tore through a village she had once called safe. The night she lost someone. The night her fear first gave birth to steel. And yet here it was. The outline of a man she had prayed she'd never see again. She drew a slow breath, fighting the shake building inside her chest. Not her hands, not anymore, but the tremor ran deeper. Voices rose, orders barked, boots scuffed. She pressed closer to the wall, every muscle coiled. And then, a door slammed open. Two men stepped into the courtyard, rifles slung, laughing at something only they found funny. They moved toward the truck, their laughter cracking the silence. She didn't breathe. They passed within feet of her, the smell of smoke and sweat heavy on them. One spat in the dirt, the other muttered something under his breath. They climbed into the truck, the engine growled, headlights cut across the courtyard. She ducked low, shadows swallowing her as the truck rolled out the gate. Silence again. Her pulse slowed. Not yet, not now, timing was everything. Her team was waiting for her signal, but she couldn't give it, not until she knew for sure. Because if the man inside was who she thought he was. This mission wasn't just strategy, it was personal. She slipped toward the side of the compound, hugging the wall, finding the blind spots she had memorized from the satellite photos. She climbed a narrow ladder, reached the second floor, crouched by the open shutters. Inside, the man paced. She caught only fragments of his voice, muffled by distance and language, but the tone was unmistakable, cold, commanding. Her nails dug into her palms. She had heard that voice before, on a night when the world burned, when a child cried out, when she held someone's hand that slipped away in smoke and blood. Her throat tightened. She wanted to move, to end it, to silence that voice forever. But missions weren't built on want. She leaned back, pressed her body against the cold stone wall, forced herself to breathe. Not yet. Her earpiece crackled softly, a whisper, "Lieutenant status." Her lips barely moved, not clear hold. The silence returned, and in it her mind betrayed her. She saw again that night, the fire, the screams, the chaos, a figure in the distance standing tall, unmoved while the world collapsed. And now here, alive. She closed her eyes, teeth clenched. This mission had just become something her team couldn't know. Not yet. The man inside barked another order. A subordinate hurried out, boots pounding against the stone. She pressed tighter into shadow as he rushed past, unaware of her presence. Her hand brushed the transmitter at her side. One press, and the strike team would move. But her thumb hovered, because ending the compound wasn't enough. Not for her. She needed confirmation. She needed to see his face, to know. Only then could she steady her hands again. Only then could she finish what had started years ago. And only then could she answer the question that haunted her since the map was laid on the table. Why this mission? Why her? Because sometimes fate didn't ask permission. It dragged you back. And this time she wouldn't look away. The air inside was colder than the night. Stone walls held the day's heat outside, but within the compound breathed a different kind of silence, one filled with whispers, boots scuffing, metal clinking against metal. She pressed her back against the narrow corridor, breathing shallow, every step measured. The scent hit first, burnt oil, old smoke, sweat clinging to fabric never washed clean. It wasn't the scent of a home, it was a bunker, a place meant for orders and obedience, not for life. Her boots barely touched the ground as she moved, careful, patient. Every shadow stretched long in the lantern's glow. She traced the sound of voices, closer now, clearer. A room at the end of the hall, the man's voice again. Her chest tightened. That voice had lived in her head for years, buried beneath layers of silence she forced over it. But tonight, it returned, scraping against scars she had never let heal. She reached the door, wooden, cracked, light spilling from beneath. She crouched low, peering through a sliver in the frame. Inside, men sat around a table, maps spread, weapons leaning against walls. A generator hummed faintly in the corner. The man at the head of the table leaned forward, hands pressed against the wood. His face still in shadow, but his presence filled the room. Others listened, no interruptions, no resistance. Her nails dug into her gloves. She whispered into her calm, "Target in sight," confirming. Static crackled back. Then Sergeant Malik's voice, low, steady, "Copy, signal when ready." Her thumb brushed the transmitter, just one press. That was all it would take. The strike team would breach. The compound would fall. But her hand froze. Because it wasn't enough to destroy the place, not for her. She needed to see him, needed to know. A sound broke her focus, footsteps behind. Her body snapped into motion, pressing flat against the wall as a boy, no more than 16, walked down the corridor carrying a tray of cups. His steps were uneven, nervous, his eyes lowered. She held her breath. He passed within feet of her, unaware, the tray trembling in his hands. For a moment she almost reached out, almost stopped him. But he entered the room, setting the cups down at the table. The man's voice softened briefly, a pat on the boy's shoulder, a smile maybe, the kind reserved not for soldiers but for pawns. Her throat tightened. The boy turned, exiting. Their eyes met just for a second, his widened not in recognition but in fear. Her finger pressed to her lips, silent. He froze, then nodded ever so slightly and kept walking, tray empty in his hands. Her heart pounded. Not everyone inside these walls was guilty. Some were trapped, used, just like others she had seen before, just like. She stopped the thought, forced it down. This wasn't the time. But the boy's face lingered, his fear, his silence. The man inside barked another order. A subordinate spread a new map across the table, lines drawn, routes circled, villages marked. Her jaw clenched. These weren't defensive plans. These were targets. Civilians. Her thumb brushed the transmitter again, but once more she stopped. Because she saw it. The man leaned forward, the light catching his face for the first time. Her breath caught. It was him. Older now, heavier but unmistakable. The same eyes, the same jaw, the same man who had stood untouched by fire years ago as her world crumbled. Her knees weakened, though she didn't move. It wasn't just recognition, it was proof. She whispered into the calm, her voice cracked softer than she wanted. Confirmed. A pause, then Malik again. Copy, awaiting your mark. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Her mind swirled. Orders demanded she signal. Protocol demanded she stay detached. But her body betrayed her, muscles tense, breath uneven. This wasn't just a target, this was a ghost. A ghost who had walked from her, passed into her crosshairs. And ghosts didn't vanish with orders. The boy's footsteps echoed faintly outside again. She turned her head. His eyes caught hers one more time from down the corridor, wide, afraid. He shook his head barely, as if warning her. Then he disappeared into the dark. She froze. Something was wrong. Her instincts screamed. She scanned the room again, men shifting, a subtle change in posture, a hand brushing against a rifle too soon. And then it hit her. They knew. Not fully, not her exact position, but something, a presence, a tension. The man at the head of the table lifted his hand. The room fell silent. His gaze swept toward the door, toward her. Her chest clenched. She had seconds. Her finger pressed the transmitter, once. A whisper of static confirmed the signal had gone through. The strike was coming. But as boots thundered outside and voices rose in alarm, her mind wasn't on the mission. It was on him. The man who had stolen her past, the man whose orders had carved her fear into bone. And now he was within reach. Chaos erupted. Shouts, gunfire, explosions shaking the ground. She slipped into the room as smoke filled the air, rifle raised, every motion precise. Men scrambled, some firing, some diving for cover. Her team burst through the other entrance, Malik's voice shouting commands. But her eyes saw only him. He stood calm in the storm, eyes locking with hers across the chaos. Recognition flickered there. And something else. A smile. Small knowing. Her finger tightened on the trigger. But she didn't fire. Not yet. Because in that moment, she realized something that made her blood run cold. If he knew her, then maybe he had always known. And maybe this mission wasn't about ending him. Maybe it was about drawing her here. The thought hit harder than the gunfire around her. And as her team fought, as shouts echoed and walls shook, she hesitated. For the first time since she learned to steady her hands, she froze. And in that pause, he slipped away into the smoke. Gone. Like a ghost. Her chest heaved. Her rifle lowered. Around her the battle raged, but inside silence. Because this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. And now she knew the truth. He wasn't just her past. He was her future fight. The air inside was colder than the night. Stone walls held the day's heat outside, but within the compound breathed a different kind of silence, one filled with whispers, boots scuffing, metal clinking against metal. She pressed her back against the narrow corridor, breathing shallow, every step measured. The scent hit first: burnt oil, old smoke, sweat clinging to fabric never washed clean. It wasn't the scent of a home, it was a bunker, a place meant for orders and obedience, not for life. Her boots barely touched the ground as she moved, careful, patient. Every shadow stretched long in the lantern's glow. She traced the sound of voices, closer now, clearer. A room at the end of the hall. The man's voice again. Her chest tightened. That voice had lived in her head for years, buried beneath layers of silence she forced over it. But tonight, it returned, scraping against scars she had never let heal. She reached the door, wooden, cracked, light spilling from beneath. She crouched low, peering through a sliver in the frame. Inside, men sat around a table, maps spread, weapons leaning against walls. A generator hummed faintly in the corner. The man at the head of the table leaned forward, hands pressed against the wood. His face still in shadow, but his presence filled the room. Others listened, no interruptions, no resistance. Her nails dug into her gloves. She whispered into her comm, target in sight, confirming. Static crackled back. Then Sergeant Malik's voice, low, steady. Copy, signal when ready. Her thumb brushed the transmitter, just one press. That was all it would take. The strike team would breach. The compound would fall. But her hand froze. Because it wasn't enough to destroy the place. Not for her. She needed to see him, needed to know. A sound broke her focus, footsteps behind. Her body snapped into motion, pressing flat against the wall as a boy, no more than 16, walked down the corridor carrying a tray of cups. His steps were uneven, nervous, his eyes lowered. She held her breath. He passed within feet of her, unaware, the tray trembling in his hands. For a moment she almost reached out, almost stopped him. But he entered the room, setting the cups down at the table. The man's voice softened briefly, a pat on the boy's shoulder, a smile maybe, the kind reserved not for soldiers but for pawns. Her throat tightened. The boy turned, exiting. Their eyes met just for a second, his widened not in recognition but in fear. Her finger pressed to her lips, silent. He froze, then nodded ever so slightly and kept walking, tray empty in his hands. Her heart pounded. Not everyone inside these walls was guilty. Some were trapped, used, just like others she had seen before, just like. She stopped the thought, forced it down. This wasn't the time. But the boy's face lingered, his fear, his silence. The man inside barked another order. A subordinate spread a new map across the table, lines drawn, routes circled, villages marked. Her jaw clenched. These weren't defensive plans, these were targets. Civilians. Her thumb brushed the transmitter again, but once more she stopped. Because she saw it. The man leaned forward, the light catching his face for the first time. Her breath caught. It was him. Older now, heavier but unmistakable. The same eyes, the same jaw, the same man who had stood untouched by fire years ago as her world crumbled. Her knees weakened, though she didn't move. It wasn't just recognition, it was proof. She whispered into the comm, her voice cracked softer than she wanted. Confirmed. A pause, then Malik again. Copy, awaiting your mark. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Her mind swirled. Orders demanded she signal. Protocol demanded she stay detached. But her body betrayed her, muscles tense, breath uneven. This wasn't just a target, this was a ghost. A ghost who had walked from her, passed into her crosshairs. And ghosts didn't vanish with orders. The boy's footsteps echoed faintly outside again. She turned her head. His eyes caught hers one more time from down the corridor, wide, afraid. He shook his head barely, as if warning her. Then he disappeared into the dark. She froze. Something was wrong. Her instincts screamed. She scanned the room again, men shifting, a subtle change in posture, a hand brushing against a rifle too soon. And then it hit her. They knew. Not fully, not her exact position, but something, a presence, a tension. The man at the head of the table lifted his hand. The room fell silent. His gaze swept toward the door, toward her. Her chest clenched. She had seconds. Her finger pressed the transmitter, once. A whisper of static confirmed the signal had gone through. The strike was coming. But as boots thundered outside and voices rose in alarm, her mind wasn't on the mission. It was on him. The man who had stolen her past. The man whose orders had carved her fear into bone. And now he was within reach. Chaos erupted. Shouts, gunfire, explosions shaking the ground. She slipped into the room as smoke filled the air, rifle raised, every motion precise. Men scrambled, some firing, some diving for cover. Her team burst through the other entrance, Malik's voice shouting commands. But her eyes saw only him. He stood calm in the storm, eyes locking with hers across the chaos. Recognition flickered there. And something else. A smile. Small knowing. Her finger tightened on the trigger. But she didn't fire. Not yet. Because in that moment, she realized something that made her blood run cold. If he knew her, then maybe he had always known. And maybe this mission wasn't about ending him. Maybe it was about drawing her here. The thought hit harder than the gunfire around her. And as her team fought, as shouts echoed and walls shook, she hesitated. For the first time since she learned to steady her hands, she froze. And in that pause, he slipped away into the smoke. Gone. Like a ghost. Her chest heaved. Her rifle lowered. Around her the battle raged, but inside silence. Because this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. And now she knew the truth. He wasn't just her past. He was her future fight. The smoke still clung to her clothes. Hours had passed since the compound burned, yet the scent followed her like a second skin. Burnt wood, gunpowder, dust unsettled by boots and bullets. She sat on the edge of the armored vehicle, helmet in her hands, staring at the ground as if the sand itself might give her answers. But it gave her nothing. Behind her the team moved, voices sharp, tired, echoing off the steel walls of the base as they unloaded crates seized from the raid. Ammunition, documents, maps smeared with blood. A victory, they called it. She didn't feel victorious. Her eyes stung, not from smoke but from memory. The face she had seen, the man who should not exist anymore. The man she thought had been swallowed by fire years ago. He was alive, and worse, he had looked at her like he knew. Her hands trembled now, just faintly, hidden in the shadow of her helmet. No one noticed, or maybe they chose not to. Lieutenant. She looked up. Malik stood there, dirt streaking his face, his uniform torn at the sleeve. He carried himself with the weight of someone who had seen enough battles to know when one wasn't over. You should get checked, he said, voice steady but softer than usual. I'm fine. He studied her, eyes narrowing, not with suspicion but with recognition. He knew something was different. You froze, he said quietly. Her chest tightened. I didn't. You did, I saw it. The words cut deeper than gunfire. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her throat ached with words she couldn't release. Malik sighed, crouching slightly to meet her gaze. You're good, Lieutenant, better than most, but don't lie to me, not here, not after tonight. Her jaw tightened. Silence was safer than truth. She looked away. He didn't push. He just stood there for a long moment, then straightened. "Debrief in an hour, don't be late." His boots echoed as he walked away. She stared at the ground again. The debrief was worse. They sat in a small room, maps spread across the table, photos pinned to the wall. The colonel paced, his voice sharp, cutting through fatigue. Successful operation, supplies seized, networks disrupted. He paused, letting the words sink in. But success was a fragile word. 2 soldiers hadn't made it back. Their names spoken quietly, their absence felt louder than the colonel's report. Her chest ached at the sound of their names. She had spoken with one of them just yesterday. He had joked about missing his daughter's birthday again, promised himself he'd send a gift when this mission ended. Now it never would. Her eyes burned, but she blinked hard, forcing the moisture away. Soldiers didn't cry in debriefs. The colonel's gaze shifted to her. "Lieutenant, your infiltration gave us the edge. Without it, this would have been bloodier. Well done." The words rang hollow. She nodded, but inside shame burned. Because she hadn't done what she could have. She had let him escape. The colonel moved on, listing seized intel, possible leads. But her mind wandered. Every detail blurred except one, the man's face, his eyes, the way he had smiled. The smile haunted her. It wasn't fear, it wasn't surprise, it was recognition. As if he had been waiting. When the debrief ended, chairs scraped, boots shuffled, voices dropped to murmurs. She lingered, gathering her notes slowly, as if delay might keep her from what waited outside. Malik approached again, his expression unreadable. "You need rest," he said. She almost laughed. Rest, as if sleep could silence the echoes in her head. Instead, she said, "So do you." He studied her again, then leaned closer, his voice low. Who was he? Her body stiffened. "What?" "In the room," Malik said. "The man you locked onto, you knew him, didn't you?" The words struck like a blow. She forced her face still, her voice even. "He was the target." "That's not what I asked." Her pulse quickened. She wanted to deny it, to push him away with silence. But Malik's eyes didn't leave hers. He wasn't accusing, he was searching. She stood abruptly, shoving her notes into her pack. "Drop it, Sergeant." He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched as she walked past him and out into the night. The air outside was cool, the stars sharp against the black sky. She walked until the voices of the others faded, until the shadows of the hangar swallowed her. Only then did she let herself breathe. Her hands pressed against her knees, her head lowering. The tremor returned, not in her fingers, but in her chest, her breath uneven, ragged. She whispered into the dark. "Why now?" Her voice cracked. Why had he appeared again, after all these years? Why here, in this mission, this place? And why had he looked at her as if he had been waiting for her? The questions clawed at her, but no answers came. Only silence. The next morning, the base was alive with movement. Radios crackled, vehicles roared, soldiers moved like currents in a tide. But beneath it all was the quiet weight of loss. 2 caskets draped in flags. The ceremony was brief. Words spoken, heads bowed, silence held. She stood among them, her posture straight, her face unreadable, but inside she was breaking. She thought of the soldier's daughter, thought of the gift he would never send. And guilt pressed heavier than grief. Because while they mourned the fallen, her mind was on the man who had slipped through the smoke. She left the ceremony early, retreating to her quarters. The room was small, walls bare, the bed stiff. Her rifle lay across the table, cleaned, ready. She stared at it, her reflection faint in the polished metal. Her hands were steady again, always steady. But steadiness meant nothing when the heart shook beneath. A soft knock broke the silence. She opened the door to find Reyes, the young corporal who had once asked why she volunteered. He looked smaller today, his face pale, eyes tired. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" She nodded. He hesitated, shifting his weight. When you were in there, when everything went loud, how do you not freeze? Her chest tightened. She almost laughed at the irony, almost told him the truth that she had frozen, that the ghost of her past had stolen her breath, her focus, her trigger finger. But his eyes searched hers, desperate not for truth, but for something to hold on to. So she lied, gently, you don't think, you just move, one step at a time. He nodded slowly, as if memorizing the words, then almost whispering, I don't know if I can do that. Her throat ached. She placed a hand on his shoulder, firm, steady. You can, because fear doesn't mean you're weak, it means you care, and that's what keeps you human. His eyes glistened, just faintly, before he nodded again and walked away. She closed the door, leaned against it, her hand trembling now. Because the words she had given him were the ones she had once needed herself. And yet when it mattered most, she had failed them. That night sleep didn't come. She lay in darkness, listening to the faint hum of the bass, her mind replaying the moment again and again, his face, his smile, his escape. And beneath it all, a whisper she couldn't silence. What if Malik was right? What if she wasn't here by chance? What if the mission wasn't the mission at all? Her eyes opened in the dark, sharp, unblinking. Because for the first time she wondered, had she been chosen for this operation? Or had someone chosen her? And if so, why? The war room smelled of ink and dust. Stacks of seized documents lay spread across the table, maps pinned to the wall, photos taped under harsh fluorescent lights. A dozen eyes studied them, but hers lingered longer, sharper, searching for something she wasn't sure she wanted to find. The colonel stood at the head, voice clipped and cold. These records confirm supply lines, weapons, routes, contacts, but more importantly, he tapped a photo, the grainy image of a face half shrouded in smoke. Our ghost. Her chest tightened. The photo was blurred, but the outline was enough. That jawline, those eyes. The same man who had stared at her in the compound, alive when he shouldn't be. The colonel's hand pressed against the photo. Codename, Black Veil, leader of the insurgent cell, the one who slipped the noose. Her heart skipped, Black Veil. The name was a blade, sharp and cold. He wasn't just a survivor, he was him, the man she thought dead. The colonel continued, he's not a myth anymore, and he's dangerous, too dangerous to let slip again. Her fingers curled into fists beneath the table. She forced her face blank, her breathing steady. No one could see what she felt. The colonel's gaze swept the room. Study everything, patterns, names, places, find me his trail. The team nodded, voices low as they broke into groups, spreading across the room like rivers branching from the same source. She stayed where she was, staring at the photo. Black Veil. The name felt deliberate, theatrical, and yet beneath it she saw the truth, a man she once knew better than herself. Her throat tightened. He shouldn't exist, and yet he did. A voice cut through her thoughts. You've seen him before, haven't you? She flinched. Malik had slid into the chair beside her, eyes sharp, his voice low enough for only her to hear. Her chest burned, but she forced calm. Everyone's seen him, he's on the wall. Not like that. Malik leaned closer, studying her face instead of the photo. You knew him before tonight, before the raid. Her pulse quickened. She wanted to deny it, to push him back with a lie. But Malik's stare was relentless, the stare of a soldier who'd survived by reading the truth in silence. I don't know what you think you saw, she said, her tone flat, but you're wrong. Malik didn't move, didn't blink. His jaw flexed once before he leaned back. Maybe, or maybe not. He stood, leaving her with the photo. Her hands trembled. She shoved them under the table. The night dragged into morning. Hours bent under the weight of paper, ink, and whispers. She traced maps with her eyes, searching for patterns, convoys, safe houses, codes written in fractured languages. And then she saw it. A mark small, hidden in the margin of a map. Not a location, not a note, a symbol. Her breath hitched. She knew that symbol. Years ago, before the fire, before the ashes, before she buried his memory, he had drawn it. On paper, on dirt, once even on her hand when words weren't enough. A circle, broken at the edge like an open door. She touched the map, her fingers tracing the mark. He had left it for her. The realization was a weight and a weapon all at once. He knew she would see it. He wanted her to. Her stomach turned. This wasn't coincidence. This was a game. And she was the piece. Find something. She jerked her hand back. Malik again appearing like a shadow. His eyes flicked to the symbol, then back to her. It's nothing, she said too quickly. He studied her, his silence louder than any accusation. Lieutenant, the colonel's voice boomed across the room. You have something. Her heart pounded. She glanced at the map, then at Malik's stare, then back to the colonel. Every choice felt like a blade. If she told them about the symbol, they'd ask how she knew. If she stayed silent, she'd bury the lead that could bring them closer. She swallowed hard. Possible trail, convoy route heading east, could connect to his network. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth. The colonel nodded. Good, run it down. The moment passed. The symbol stayed between her and the shadows. That night she sat alone in her quarters, the map folded on her desk, the symbol burning into her eyes. Why had he left it? A message, a warning, an invitation. Her head dropped into her hands. She wanted to believe it was a mistake, a trick, anything but what it was. Deliberate. A memory clawed its way back. Him, years ago, leaning against a broken wall, dust in his hair, his smile sharp despite the war around them. You'll always know it's me, he had said, drawing that broken circle in the dirt. Even when the world tries to make me a ghost. Her chest tightened. She slammed the map shut. A knock broke the silence. Lieutenant. Ray's again, hesitant. She opened the door, masking her turmoil. What is it? He shifted awkwardly. They're saying we move out again, east, tomorrow. Her stomach dropped, east, toward the route she had given, toward the symbol. She nodded slowly, understood. Ray's hesitated, his voice lower. Do you ever wonder why we're the ones sent on these missions? Always us, not the others. The question struck deep. She forced a small smile. Because we get the job done. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded anyway and left. When the door shut, her mask fell. Ray's words echoed. Why always them? Why her? She looked at the map again, at the broken circle. And the thought she had buried clawed free. What if this wasn't about stopping him? What if this was about finding her? The next morning the convoy roared east. Engines thundered, dust rising like smoke. Soldiers tightened straps, checked weapons, silence heavy between them. She sat inside, helmet on, rifle across her knees. Across from her, Malik watched. Not the road, not the horizon, her. Every bump of the vehicle rattled her bones, but nothing shook more than the thought in her head that she was being led, step by step, into a trap woven just for her. And the worst part, she wasn't sure she wanted to escape it. Because beneath the fear, beneath the shame, a darker truth pulsed. She wanted to see him again. She needed to. The road stretched endless. Dust clouds rose like ghosts behind the convoy, blurring the horizon into a pale, suffocating haze. The sun was high, merciless, burning down on steel and sweat. She sat rigid in the armored carrier, helmet shadowing her eyes, rifle steady on her lap. The hum of the engine drowned her thoughts, but not enough. Malik sat across from her, arms folded, gaze unyielding. Ray's beside him tapped his knee in a nervous rhythm, a silent drumbeat of doubt. Every soldier carried silence differently. For her, it was a weight pressing down on her chest. For Ray's, it leaked through restless movement. For Malik, it was a blade, sharp, patient, waiting. She tried to breathe past it, but the symbol haunted her, the broken circle his mark. Was she walking into an ambush or an invitation? The convoy slowed. The radio crackled with static, then a clipped order. Hold, recon ahead. The carrier lurched to a stop. She tightened her grip on the rifle, listening. The desert outside seemed too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the ticking of the cooling engine and the low murmur of men checking their gear. Then, a single crack, not thunder, not metal, a rifle shot. The silence shattered. Contact North Ridge. Chaos erupted. Soldiers scrambled from vehicles, weapons raised. Dust swirled in the sudden rush. Her boots hit the ground before thought caught up, body moving on instinct. She dropped behind a burned-out truck, heart hammering, eyes scanning the ridge. Figures darted between rocks, shadows spilling fire down onto the convoy. Rounds snapped past her ears, the sound slicing air into fragments. She pressed low, forcing her breath steady, finger brushing the trigger. Ray slid beside her, eyes wide. "We're pinned." Malik's voice cut from behind. "Flank left. Push them off the ridge before they choke us here." Orders rippled. Soldiers surged into motion, but something inside her stilled. Because amid the chaos she saw him. A figure standing higher on the ridge, framed by the sun. Not firing, not hiding. Watching. Black veil. Her chest tightened. He didn't need a mask. Even from this distance she knew. The posture, the stance etched into memory. Her hands trembled once, then steadied. Rifle against her shoulder, breath sharp. She had him in her sights. All it would take was one pull. But she couldn't. Not yet. Because he didn't move like prey. He moved like someone waiting for her. A burst of gunfire ripped into the truck beside her, showering her with sparks. She rolled, cursing, firing blind toward the ridge. Ray shouted something, dragging her lower. "Stay down, damn it," he yelled, his voice breaking with fear. Her eyes flicked back to the ridge. He was gone. The battle stretched on, brutal and raw. Minutes blurred into screams, metal, and the stink of burning fuel. The team fought tooth and claw, clawing their way up the slope, step by bloody step. By the time the last shots faded, the ridge was theirs. Bodies lay strewn in the dirt. The desert wind returned, carrying the sour stench of death. But not him. He had vanished again. The colonel's voice crackled through comms, ragged with static. "Report." Malik answered, his tone clipped. "Ridge secured, convoy intact, enemy retreating." Retreating, not destroyed, not captured. Her stomach sank. It wasn't retreat, it was design. She wiped dust from her face, her hands trembling again. But this time she didn't hide it. Because she knew the truth now. He wasn't trying to kill her. He was pulling her closer. Night fell heavy, draping the camp in shadows. Fires burned low, soldiers muttering in tired clusters. The ridge loomed dark behind them, a scar against the stars. She sat alone, away from the firelight, cleaning her rifle with mechanical precision. Each movement precise, deliberate, like she could scrub the day away. But she couldn't. The image stayed, him standing on the ridge, waiting. A shadow moved near her. "Malik. You froze today." The words were blunt, cutting. Her hand stilled. "I didn't." "You had him in your sights," Malik pressed, stepping closer. "I saw it, and you didn't pull the trigger." Her jaw clenched. "We were under fire. I prioritized survival." He crouched, eyes locked on hers, voice low and sharp. "Don't lie to me." Her breath caught. His stare was unrelenting, carving through every wall she had built. "You know him," Malik whispered. "Who is he?" The question sliced deep, leaving silence behind. She looked away, throat tight. She wanted to deny, to push him back again, but her strength faltered. Finally she whispered, "He wasn't always this." Malik's face hardened. "And you weren't always this either, but here we are." Her chest ached. Does the colonel know? Malik asked. She shook her head slowly. Malik stood, his shadow long against the dirt. Then you better decide fast, because whatever game this is, you're not the only piece on the board, and next time, hesitation will kill us. He walked away, leaving her with the fire's fatting glow and the weight of her silence. She closed her eyes, memory dragging her backward. Years ago, before the betrayal, before the smoke and ruins. Him, sitting across from her, laughter soft, words almost tender. You'll always know me, he had said, even in the dark. Her hands shook again, but not with fear, with longing, with grief, with rage. Because she did still know him. And that knowledge was a chain she couldn't break. Later that night, when the camp slept, she stepped beyond the fires into the dark. The ridge loomed above, silent and cold. She climbed, boots crunching dirt, each step pulling her higher. At the crest she stopped. And froze. Because he was there. Black veil, standing just beyond the shadows, arms crossed, as if he had been waiting all along. The night air stilled. The distance between them was only a few steps, but it felt like years. Her breath caught, her voice came as a whisper. Why? His silhouette shifted, his voice low, calm, carrying across the dark. You already know. Her throat closed, her heart hammered so loud it drowned the silence. She wanted to lift her rifle. She wanted to run. She wanted to fall into the years that had vanished between them. But she couldn't move. He took one step closer. And for the first time since she thought him dead, she saw his eyes. Not a ghost, not a myth. Him alive, real. And everything she had buried came crashing back. The night was breathless. The campfires below burned like tiny orange embers, too far to reach, too dim to break the silence at the ridge. She stood frozen, rifle trembling in her hands. He stood only steps away, shadow carved sharp against the starlight. Every part of her body screamed to act, to lift the weapon, to end it here, to erase the years, the scars, the betrayal. But she couldn't move. Her voice cracked first. You're supposed to be dead. His eyes glinted, calm, unshaken. Supposed to be. The sound of him, it hurt. The timbre of his voice hadn't changed, even if everything else had. Why now? She whispered, tightening her grip. Why show yourself? Because you're here, he said simply. The words cut deeper than bullets. Her chest rose, heavy and ragged. You left me in the fire. No, his tone sharpened. I pulled you out. I carried you to the trucks, left you breathing. I thought you'd be safe, but they turned you. Her jaw clenched. Turned me, I buried you. I buried everything. Because that's what they told you to do. His stare was unyielding. But they lied. They always lied. Her fingers twitched against the trigger. But her heart betrayed her more than her hands. She wanted to scream, to accuse him, to make sense of the mess burning inside. Instead, she asked the question that had gnawed at her for years. Why did you stay? Why didn't you come back? His silence stretched long, too long. Finally, he said, because I saw what they were, what we were fighting for, and what they asked us to do. I couldn't keep pretending. Her throat tightened. So you joined them, you became this. He stepped closer, voice low, almost pleading. I didn't join them, I made something new, something not poisoned by their hands. You think they're clean. You think the orders you follow are pure. Her hands trembled harder, because part of her already knew. She had seen the shadows behind her own commanders, missions that didn't add up, villages burned not by insurgents, but by the very soldiers she served beside. She had buried those doubts, buried them deep, but now, staring at him, they clawed free. They're not who you think they are, he whispered. And you're not who they think you are either. That's why they keep sending you. That's why I left the mark, for you. Her breath caught, the symbol, the broken circle. You led me here, she said, realization breaking her voice. Yes. Her rifle dropped slightly, not much, but enough. He stepped closer. One more step and she could see the scar across his cheek, new lines etched by years she had missed. "You still have a choice," he said, "but soon you won't." Her heart thundered. She wanted to ask what he meant, but the crack of a twig froze her blood. "Malik." He emerged from the shadows, rifle raised, eyes locked on Black Veil. His voice was a growl. "Step away from her, now." She spun, panic flaring. "Malik." But Malik wasn't listening. His aim was steady, unwavering. "You had him in your sights before and you didn't take the shot. I should have known. You know this man. You've been protecting him." Her chest burned. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," Malik snapped. His finger tightened on the trigger. "Move aside." Her pulse pounded in her ears. One wrong word, one twitch, and this ridge would drown in blood. Black Veil didn't move, didn't flinch. He only watched her, waiting. She stepped between them. "Malik, don't." Malik's eyes widened with fury. "You're choosing him, after everything." Her voice cracked raw. "I'm choosing not to lose both of you tonight." For the first time, Malik hesitated. His finger loosened slightly, though his rifle stayed raised. Black Veil's voice cut the silence. Calm, unshaken. "You think he'll listen? He's not here for truth. He's here for orders, and orders don't care about you." "Shut up," Malik hissed. "Ask him," Black Veil pressed, his gaze never leaving hers. "Ask him why it's always you on the front line, why the colonel keeps sending you." Her throat tightened. Malik's jaw clenched, his silence heavier than any answer. She turned to him, voice breaking. "Is it true?" Malik's eyes flickered just once, before his stare hardened again. Her heart cracked, because that flicker was enough. Black Veil stepped closer. "You're not their soldier, you're their bait." The world tilted. Memories flashed, missions too dangerous, always assigned to her squad. Eyes in the briefings that avoided hers. Silence where answers should have been. It wasn't chance, it was design. Her knees felt weak, the rifle heavy in her hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, staring at Malik. Malik's face twisted, torn. "Because if you knew, you'd stop fighting, and I couldn't let you stop." Her chest burned, rage and grief colliding. Black Veil's voice softened. "You see now." The night seemed to close in, the stars dimming above. Malik's rifle wavered. His eyes shone with something raw, something almost desperate. "Don't listen to him. He abandoned you. He's the reason you almost died. He's the reason we've buried half our men. Don't let him twist you." Her breath shook. Both voices pulled at her, tearing her apart. Black Veil, Malik, past and present, truth and loyalty, betrayal and survival. Her hands trembled, rifle heavy between them. She had to choose. But before she could, a flare split the sky. The camp below erupted with alarms, shouts, gunfire. The ridge lit red. All three froze. An attack, another ambush. Malik's eyes darted toward the camp, then back to her. "Decide fast, whose side are you on?" Black Veil's gaze stayed steady, calm even as the world burned below. "You already know." Her chest heaved, torn between them. The screams below grew louder, the fire brighter. Her choice could wait no longer. The flare burned out, leaving the sky scarred with smoke. Below, the camp convulsed in chaos, gunfire cracking, voices colliding, shadows swarming like a tide. The ridge shook with every blast. She stood between them. Malik's rifle still half raised, Black Veil's stare steady, both waiting for her to choose. But the choice was no longer hers alone. The night had stolen it. Malik spat a curse. "We're wasting time." He bolted past her, sprinting downhill toward the camp. His silhouette was swallowed by smoke. She turned back. Black Veil hadn't moved. "You should go," she said, breath shaking. His eyes lingered on hers. "And if I do, will you follow?" Her chest tightened. She wanted to say no, she wanted to say yes. Instead, she whispered, "I don't know." For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not triumph, not calculation, something closer to sorrow. Then he melted into the shadows, gone as if the night itself had taken him. She was alone. The ridge felt like a wound beneath her boots as she ran, lungs burning, dust choking. The camp erupted ahead, silhouettes locked in close-quarter firefights, tracers ripping the dark, the acrid sting of smoke stinging her eyes. She dove behind a sandbag wall, rifle braced, firing into the shapes pressing against their line. Each shot jolted her bones, but her hand stayed steady. Too steady. Ray stumbled into cover beside her, blood streaking his temple. His voice cracked. They came from everywhere, were surrounded. She pressed harder into the wall, firing, shouting back, "Hold the line." But part of her knew, the line was already broken. Through the smoke, she glimpsed Malik rallying men, dragging the wounded, shouting orders that cracked like whips. His strength was iron, unyielding. But even iron bends when the fire is hot enough. Her chest heaved. She scanned the chaos, searching for him, for Black Veil. And then she saw him, not leading the charge, not killing indiscriminately, moving through the smoke with precision, pulling his own wounded back, covering their retreat. The sight twisted her insides. He wasn't there to annihilate, he was there to survive. The battle raged for what felt like hours, until exhaustion and smoke blurred time into a single pulse of violence. By the time dawn bled across the horizon, the ground was littered with bodies, friend and foe alike. The gunfire faded, the screams quieted, the desert exhaled. She staggered to her feet, ears ringing, throat raw. Her rifle dangled useless in her hands. Around her, men groaned, crawled, clutched wounds. Malik emerged through the haze, face streaked with soot and blood, eyes blazing. He pointed at her. "You knew this was coming." Her chest caved. "I didn't." "You did," Malik snarled. "You saw his mark, you knew, and you let us walk into it anyway." The weight of his accusation slammed into her. She opened her mouth, but no words came, because deep down part of him was right. Ray stumbled forward, voice weak. "She saved us. We'd be dead if not for her shots." Malik's jaw flexed, torn between rage and silence. His eyes burned into hers, but he said nothing more. The survivors gathered what they could. Bodies were dragged into rows, names whispered into the dust. The dead outnumbered the living. By midday, a chopper thumped overhead, hauling them out of the wreckage. She sat in the corner of the rattling bird, helmet off, wind whipping her hair. Blood crusted her knuckles. The symbol haunted her mind. Black Veil was still out there, alive, watching, waiting. The colonel's voice was steel when the debrief began. This wasn't a victory. This was survival, and survival is not enough. His eyes cut to her. "You had eyes on him again. Why didn't you take the shot?" The room stiffened. Malik looked down, Ray's hands twisted together. Her throat was dry. She forced the words out, because he wasn't the enemy in that moment. The colonel slammed his fist against the table. "He's always the enemy." But his anger barely touched her, because her war wasn't against Black Veil anymore. It was against herself. That night sleep didn't come. She lay awake, replaying the ridge, the smoke, the eyes that had once belonged to someone she trusted. When dawn came again, she slipped outside. The air was cool, the sky washed pale. She walked alone, away from the barracks, boots crunching gravel, until she reached the fence line. And she saw it, carved faintly into the dirt beyond the wire, the broken circle. Her breath caught. No words, no message, just the mark, a reminder, a tether. She crouched, staring at it until her vision blurred. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the truth pressing down on her chest. He wasn't gone, he never would be. She closed her eyes, whispering to the silence, "What do you want from me?" The wind answered with nothing but dust. But deep down she already knew. It wasn't about missions, or orders, or even betrayal. It was about choice, hers. And for the first time, she understood the weight of it. When she returned to the barracks, Malik's stare followed her. Distrust, distance, yet beneath it something else, a plea. Ray's looked too, eyes tired, searching for something to hold on to. She gave them nothing, not yet. Because this war wasn't finished, not out there, not inside her. It would never be clean, never be simple. But she would not tremble again. Her hands were steady now, steady enough to carry what tomorrow demanded. And when tomorrow came, whether it brought him, Malik, or the truth she had buried, she would be ready. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.